Well, it's a hot one here this morning. I did start recording a little note about South Africa, and then my battery went flat on my camera. So what I did is I went into the study and I just spoke to somebody else on Zoom and relayed my thoughts to them via Zoom. So I'm going to share a little recording with you just now on my discussions on Zoom, on my thoughts on South Africa, and you can then give me your feelings on it, guys.
Quite a poor light situation here at the moment, but I just wanted to cover a little bit of information I had with regards to South Africa. I had a colleague of mine send me some information just today, and it was regarding South Africa and its corrupt government as much as anything else. Basically, it started off where some young surfers were arrested for surfing during the lockdown process, and they were arrested, and they weren't maintaining social distancing or any of that stuff. Anyway, it went on to put all the unjusts that are going on, which the government, South African government, seemed to have just ignored, which are he gave a long list of well over 100 things that it was endless, corruption and embezzlement and, things that people had walked away with and hadn't, justice hadn't prevailed, as it were. And it got me thinking about South Africa. I've got very fond memories of South Africa, as you all know. So it got me thinking about that again. And I then came across no, I didn't. It was Evan. Evan again, the guy who told me this information. He was sharing with me where the Rand sterling exchange rate was currently, and I fell off my chair. It was, today it's 23.4 Rand to the pound, which is unbelievable. I know it was crazy. It was around the 13, 14 mark when I last checked it, which I thought was crazy then. But I, thinking right back when I went to South Africa to live in 1980, the end of 1980, it was 1.75 Rand to the pound. That's what it was, 1.75 Rand. And back in those days, a Rand was better value than a pound. In South Africa, the Rand bought more in South Africa than what the pound bought in the UK, if that makes sense. In other words, I could go to the supermarket in South Africa, buy more with my Rand than what I could buy with my pound in the UK. So a very different situation, in terms of quality of life in those days. And I'm talking about for everybody that was working. In those days, I think unemployment, should I say, was running in around 8-9% of the working population weren't working. And now it's around the 25, 26, 27% mark of the population which aren't working. Obviously, there aren't the jobs in the country now compared with where there were jobs. So there was enough work around. The social divides in terms of, black, coloured and white, and which I know it was going to bring up and throw at me, which were there obviously then, but they're there now. It hasn't really changed. There's even there's always been social divides in the country, and there is here for that matter. I heard somebody quoting in a newspaper over here that this coronavirus is going to make us a more equal society. Well, if it means it's going to make everyone poor, yeah, okay. but some will be poorer than others, so it's still never going to be totally equal. But the point I'm making is, I mean, I went out to South Africa in 1980 as a young, it was 81 actually, January 81, I could say 80, but we were getting ready to go in 1980. I went out as a very young supermarket manager, and I had I was very young, I had a very young wife and two very young children. And you went there with very basic knowledge. I'd done a little bit of reading up on it, I'd done a bit of homework. There had been a program on the UK TV about South Africa, and was it all doom and gloom? What was going to happen? So it was. I think it was reaching the stage where people were beginning to feel a bit reluctant to go and live in South Africa. But being the adventurous type I was, I thought, no, I'm going to go. The company who I worked for, Checkers, were recruiting heavily in London at the time. And I said, yeah, I'm up for a bit of this. I'm going to go. And I'm glad I did. But the first year, very tough, extremely tough, as it would be for anybody going into a brand new culture, saying goodbye to his old culture and going into a new one and having to find his feet. It was very tough. We couldn't, to get the values of things right. What could we afford? What couldn't we? All that took time. As you would make mistakes in the first few months, and we did. We made plenty, but over time we got over it. We got better, and over time we got better at what we were doing. And the only thing I would say, going back to those early days again, is people all worked. I mean, I had a close relationship working with people at work of all cultures, all the various types of society, all working with me. And, it was, people were in those days earning good money, as workers I'm talking about. And they were going home and feeding their family with it. Yeah, it was, I used to take some of my staff when I got them to work late for me because I needed something done. I would sometimes run them home in my car and went in, in Davidton, which is where they live, when I was working in Benoni. And it was a poorer way of life compared with a way of life that I was having at the time. But this is no different to here. There are people living here that are poorer than me, and the people that are wealthier than me. No different. What was important was everybody had a job. So I was just going to see what Mikey was doing, and that's why I hesitated to stop for a minute. The difference now is, I think, yes, it was called apartheid in those days. There was a white minority government in power, nationalist government. It was P.W. Botha at the time. And it was a very different way of life to what it is now, for sure. But there was a certain sense of order in everything, in society as a whole. I'm not talking about persecution of one race against another. You've got to put out of your mind to a large extent, because that obviously was there then, and it's there now. It hasn't changed, and some people's views are never going to change. But what was obvious, there was a common ground of the law, and all of us, everybody, felt they had to keep within you have to do this, you can't do this, you must do this. Everybody knew what the position was as far as the law went, for example. And I can speak from the heart on this one, because I mean, you go to a new country and you want to make sure you're doing everything according the right way. You don't want to fall into making an error and it goes the wrong way. And so you had to be clear on things and make sure you were doing the right things. And it was important to get that. So I felt always felt safe, always felt there was, that things were well organized and one was safe in the environment one was living in. And I felt that, quite honestly, people I spoke to, I'm talking about other races, they were in a similar position. They knew how the law worked, and they most people respected it. Quite honestly, most people did. It was there. What's changed? Well, there's more people suffering. There's fewer jobs. There's fewer opportunities going forward. And we seem to be, we've had an ANC government in power for 25 years who seem to still feel it's not their responsibility or their fault that the country is in the mess it's in. They seem to still believe, and they're making as many of the population believe it as they possibly can, that the country is in the state it's in because of something that happened back in the days of before 1994, or before 1990. That's the reason. I think people are going to wise up to that eventually, and they're going to realise it's not that at all. It's not that at all. Africa has got to, has made these mistakes many times in the past. I think, come and live in this country. Come and live in this country. Society rules here as well, in many respects, in various classes. There is a class society here. There isn't a classless society. The laws apply to everybody, of course they do. But we still live in a class society. There are still people who can afford to do more or do less because they have benefited more through their being clever, or their parents being clever, or their grandparents being, whatever the case is, and they've acquired wealth through generations of inheritance, or they've been hardworking and got a good job and made it happen for themselves, or they've been lucky. But it's the same here as it was there. What's happened there is all got confusing. And what I don't grasp is a population, everyone's got the vote. How can they have an ANC government in power for all these years that they keep on voting back in, and they still deliver these bloody awful, shocking results for the country? I just don't get it. That part I don't get at all. I mean, I get the Mandela bit, yeah, and I get all that, but I don't get any of this other stuff that's happened. I mean, I'm disappointed with Cyril Ramaphosa, but I also can see he's just come in at a time too late when it's just the mass process of change is just too much for him to deal with. So he can't do anything right. He's not going to be allowed to do anything right. So what was there before? My view, bottom line, what South Africa had pre-1990 was better than what they've got now. And that's for everybody. That's my view. Talk to you again soon.
Yeah, I apologise for the picture quality of that. Unfortunately, when you're zooming, you're not getting the same standard of photography, videography. But that's my views, and I hope you get back to me with your thoughts. Talk to you again soon.